The city streets never slept, but neither did its shadows. Among the neon signs and luxury cars, there were lives that barely existed. A boy of no more than 12, clothes torn, cheeks smudged with dirt, ran his hands over the cold metal bars of a closed bakery window. He didn't care about the bread or the sweets. He cared about the coins he could beg for, the chance to feed his sister tonight. "Leah needs her medicine," he muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible over the screeching city. The word medicine felt heavier than any stone he'd ever lifted. He'd been asking, pleading, running, trying everything for weeks, and yet here he was, empty-handed again. He was used to rejection. People who had money didn't care about street kids. They didn't care about illnesses, about desperate sisters coughing their lungs out on a tattered blanket in a corner of the city. And yet today, something pulled him in a different direction. The car stopped at the red light, and he saw him, a man who wore wealth like armor. Expensive suit, pristine shoes, a watch that could have fed his sister for a month. The boy's stomach twisted with a strange mix of fear and resolve. This was the man. This was the billionaire who could save Leah. "Sir!" the boy shouted, dashing toward the sleek black car. The brakes screeched. The car window rolled down, and the man leaned out, one eyebrow raised in mild annoyance. "What do you want, kid?" the man asked, his voice calm but detached. "My sister, she's sick. She needs medicine," the boy said, words tripping over themselves. "Please, just help us." His small hands shook as he held up a crumpled hospital prescription. This will save her," the billionaire laughed. Not a polite chuckle, not an amused snicker. He laughed like the idea itself was absurd. "Save her?" he said, smirking. "And you think I'll just give you money? Go home, kid. Life isn't that easy." The boy's heart sank. His shoulders drooped, but he didn't give up. There was no time for giving up. Every second without the medicine was a second closer to losing Leah. "Please, sir." I don't care about the money for myself. Just my sister." "Please!" The billionaire's laughter rang louder, echoing down the street. The boy felt his resolve weaken, but then something in the man's eyes shifted. Not pity, not interest, something almost imperceptible. A flicker, and the boy held onto it, desperate, clinging to hope. Before the man could respond, the air around them changed. A screeching crash. A car swerved violently nearby, narrowly missing a street vendor and overturning a small cart full of fruit. Chaos erupted. Pedestrians screamed, and in that split second, the boy acted. He darted forward, instinct taking over, grabbing the man's arm, pulling him away from the path of danger. The billionaire stumbled but didn't fall. The fruit cart tumbled. Oranges rolled across the street like tiny suns bouncing off asphalt. The boy held his breath. "Are you crazy?" the man shouted, his voice now tinged with real fear, his earlier laughter gone. I had to," the boy yelled back. "I don't know why, but I had to make sure you were safe. Please, for my sister." For a moment, the city noise dimmed. The man stared at the boy, really looked at him. Dirt-smudged face, torn clothes, eyes burning with desperation, and something else. Courage. He realized the kid hadn't just barged in for money. He'd risked his life for a stranger. And in that risk, there was honesty. There was fire. The billionaire's face softened slightly, just enough for the boy to notice. He was calculating now, analyzing, questioning. You care about her that much?" The boy nodded. "More than anything. I'd do anything to save her." His voice cracked, but he didn't step back. Anything. The man remained silent for a heartbeat longer than felt comfortable. Then he did something unexpected. He leaned closer, squinting at the prescription the boy still held. "How much does this medicine cost?" The boy swallowed hard. He had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his mind, and now it came down to numbers, reality. 10,000. "Sir," he whispered, "if I had that, she'd be okay. But I don't." The billionaire laughed again, but it was quieter this time, less mocking, more incredulous. $10,000? You think that would save her?" "Yes," the boy said firmly, without hesitation. "It would save her life." A strange silence followed. The streets buzzed with city life, oblivious to the small, tense standoff between poverty and wealth. The man adjusted his tie, glanced around, then back at the boy. He smirked, an almost cruel kind of amusement. "And what makes you think I'll just hand you $10,000 for a stranger's child?" The boy's jaw tightened. He met the man's gaze with the kind of bravery only desperation can forge. Because someone has to care. Someone has to do the right thing. If not you, who? The billionaire chuckled again, shaking his head. "Bold, brave, foolish, pick one." And in that laugh the boy saw the impossible, a crack in the billionaire's armor. Before the tension could stretch further, fate intervened. A siren blared in the distance, urgent and piercing. A car skidded on the wet asphalt, heading straight toward the billionaire's parked car. Reflexively, the boy shouted, "Move!" The billionaire froze for a split second too long, and then, instinctively, followed the boy's command. The car slammed past. Tires squealed. Heartbeats raced. Life hung by a thread, and in that thread, the billionaire saw something raw, undeniable, life-changing. This kid had just saved him. For the first time, the billionaire looked at the boy, not as a beggar, not as a nuisance, not as a tiny problem, but as someone who had courage, urgency, and a moral compass sharper than most adults he knew. The boy straightened, chest heaving, eyes wide. He knew that in that moment, he had done more than risk his life. He had earned a chance, and the billionaire, still catching his breath, didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, it was almost inaudible. "Wait here," he said, and for the first time, there was seriousness in his tone. No laughter, no dismissal. "I need to think," the boy nodded. He didn't move. He couldn't afford to, because in his heart, he already knew. This was the moment that could change everything. The billionaire. Alexander Crane turned away from the street, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement as he walked toward his car. The boy remained where he stood, chest heaving, hands trembling, not from fear, but from the electric adrenaline of surviving the near miss. This was more than luck. Something was happening. Alexander didn't speak for several minutes, his mind spinning. No one had ever risked their life for him before. Not out of money, not out of ambition, not out of obligation. This boy had acted purely, instinctively from a place of love. And Alexander, he was unsettled. Wealth had insulated him from emotions like these. Power had made him untouchable, unfeeling. Yet here was someone tiny, dirt-streaked, shaking with exhaustion, holding nothing but truth in his gaze. "Kid," Alexander finally said, voice low, serious, not his usual mocking tone. "Do you have a name?" "Ethan," the boy replied, cautious. He didn't trust this man yet, not after the laughter, the dismissals, the absurdity of this encounter. But something in the way Alexander spoke now, steady, quiet, made him pause. "Ethan," Alexander repeated, tasting the name. "And your sister, what's her name?" "Leah," Ethan whispered almost reverently. She's really sick. If she doesn't get her medicine soon, I don't know what will happen." Alexander nodded slowly. He knew the city, its hospitals, its endless list of children who fell through the cracks. He had seen poverty. He had seen illness. But hearing it directly from a boy who risked his life to save someone else, it hit differently. It wasn't numbers on a spreadsheet. It wasn't a PR problem to manage. This was raw human desperation. Alexander sighed, rubbing his temple. "Ethan, I don't usually do this. I don't just give money to strangers." Ethan's shoulders slumped slightly, but he held his ground. "I know, but I had to try. She's my sister." A small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of Alexander's lips. "You're braver than most grown men I know," Ethan blinked. This was new. Nobody ever complimented him for bravery. Usually they scolded, chased him away, or ignored him entirely. But this man, this strange, powerful man, was noticing him, seeing him. Before either could speak further, Alexander's phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. "Board meeting in 30 minutes. Urgent. Financial projections." "Investor crisis," Alexander scowled. Life's pressures never paused for morality, courage, or miracles. But he looked back at Ethan, and the boy's wide, pleading eyes stopped him. The world could wait. For a moment, the billionaire considered the absurdity of the situation. A boy, dirty, exhausted, possibly starving, had just risked everything to save someone he loved. and now Alexander. He felt compelled to act. "Tell you what," Alexander said finally, his voice firm. "We're going to test something. If you can convince me, not just with words, but with your courage, with your heart, I'll help you. But you have to prove it. Show me that your sister's life is worth it." Ethan frowned. I don't understand." Alexander's expression was sharp. "I don't just hand out money because someone cries. Life doesn't work that way. But if you can show me, if you can make me see the truth of your words, I'll do something no one ever does. I'll save your sister." The boy's pulse raced. It sounded impossible, but hope flared. He didn't have time to second guess. Leah was depending on him. Alexander led him down a series of streets and into an alleyway, then motioned toward a massive construction site. Steel beams jutted out at impossible angles. Sparks flew as workers welded. The city's noise seemed miles away. "Climb that," Alexander said, pointing to a catwalk above the site. "Get to the top. And don't fall." Ethan froze. The steel tower was terrifying. Any misstep could mean serious injury, or worse. He swallowed hard. Why would I do that?" Alexander's gaze didn't waver. Because courage isn't just about standing on a street corner begging. It's about risk. It's about proving to yourself and others that your love is stronger than fear. If you climb and make it, I'll fund your sister's treatment. Fail, and she doesn't get it. The words hit Ethan like a hammer. Pressure, fear, responsibility. It was crushing. But he looked past the steel beams, past the danger, and saw the image of Leah, pale, weak, gasping for air, and counting on him. He didn't hesitate. With trembling hands, Ethan grabbed the first beam. The metal was cold, unyielding. He climbed slowly, carefully, 1 foot at a time. Sparks from nearby welding arcs made him flinch. His arms burned. His legs shook. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, but he couldn't, not now. Not when his sister's life was hanging by a thread. Alexander watched silently from below, a rare intensity in his eyes. There was no smirk, no amusement, just a quiet assessment of courage in its purest form. Halfway up, Ethan slipped. Heart in his throat, he dangled for a moment before regaining balance. He gasped, chest heaving, sweat mixing with dirt and grime. Pain stabbed his muscles. Fear clawed at his mind. But the thought of Leah kept him moving. He had to reach the top. Minutes, or maybe hours, later, he stood at the very peak, hands gripping the steel. The city stretched below him, indifferent, beautiful, terrifying. He had done it. He had faced fear, conquered it, and proved his determination. Alexander stepped forward, clapping slowly. "Well done," he said, voice carrying a mix of admiration and something else. Something soft that no one had ever seen in him. "You're insane. And brave. And perhaps worth my time." Ethan's heart leapt. "So, you'll help her?" Alexander nodded. "I will, but know this. Courage isn't enough. Life doesn't reward bravery alone. You've shown me intent, risk, love, but now comes the harder part. Maintaining it, protecting it, and navigating the world that will try to crush both of you." Ethan's face fell slightly, but only for a moment. He had faced steel beams, electricity, fear, and survived. He could handle the rest. The next hours were a whirlwind. Alexander made calls. Expensive cars were dispatched. Doctors were briefed. Hospitals prepped. Every resource he had was mobilized to ensure Leah got her treatment immediately. Ethan followed, awestruck. This man, who had laughed at him hours ago, was now bending the world to his will for the sake of a girl he had never met. The lines between fear, hope, and disbelief blurred. At the hospital, Ethan finally saw Leah. She was pale, fragile, eyes wide as she recognized her brother. She tried to smile, but it was weak, faint. He ran to her side, holding her hand, whispering words of hope and love. Alexander observed from a distance. There was a strange satisfaction in seeing human will and determination triumph. But even he couldn't ignore a creeping thought. Life was unpredictable. Money, power, and influence could do a lot, but they couldn't control everything. Fate, it seemed, had its own plans, and sure enough, as the medical team prepared the first doses of treatment, a sharp knock at the hospital entrance announced the arrival of someone no one expected. Someone from Alexander's past. Someone who carried influence, greed, and a dangerous curiosity about his wealth and morality. The doors swung open, and the figure entered. Alexander stiffened. Ethan clutched Leah's hand tighter. The game was about to shift. The stakes were no longer only about a sick sister and a street kid's courage. This was about power, legacy and the collision of worlds, rich and poor, fearless and cautious, innocent and calculating. And in that moment, all three, the boy, the billionaire, and the fragile girl, felt it. The true test was only beginning. The hospital doors swung open, and a gust of cold air brought in more than winter. It carried the weight of past power, old grudges, and the unmistakable scent of calculated menace. Standing there in a tailored suit that gleamed too much was Gregory Langston, Alexander Crane's former business partner, and the man responsible for many of the billionaire's early betrayals. Gregory's eyes flicked to Alexander, then to the boy clutching his sister's hand, and a smirk spread across his face, a smirk that spoke of schemes, manipulation, and greed. He had heard whispers of Alexander's impulsive acts, his sudden display of charity. And now he saw opportunity. Well, Alexander, Gregory said smoothly, his tone syrupy with false familiarity. I hear you've been helping the less fortunate. Alexander's jaw tightened. Langston, what are you doing here? Gregory's smile didn't falter. Business, old friend? And some curiosity. I couldn't help but notice a young boy, desperate, pleading for his sister. I wonder, who's really running the show here? You or the child? Ethan's grip on Leah's hand tightened. His heart pounded, not just out of fear, but from a sense of impending danger. This man radiated power in a way that made Alexander's calm and confidence seem like a thin veneer. Ethan, stay here, Alexander said quietly, stepping forward to confront Gregory. This doesn't concern you, but Ethan's resolve didn't waver. He had fought too hard, risked too much to be intimidated now. It does, he said, voice small but fierce. She's my sister, and I won't let anyone hurt her. Or us, Gregory raised an eyebrow, amused. Such spirit. It reminds me of someone I knew once. Before you became soft, Alexander. Alexander's lips pressed into a firm line. Leave, Langston. This ends now. Gregory laughed softly, the sound low and chilling. Ends, my dear friend, this is just beginning. You've stirred a hornet's nest with your sudden kindness. The board will hear about this. Investors will demand explanations. And he paused, his gaze sliding toward Ethan and Leah. I will make sure your little hero realizes the price of audacity. For a heartbeat, Ethan froze. The threat was palpable. He was just a boy. And yet, in that moment, a strange fire ignited within him, a mixture of fear, defiance, and pure love for his sister. No, Ethan said firmly. You won't scare me, or her. Or anyone who cares about her. Gregory tilted his head, intrigued. Brave words from a street rat. Tell me, boy, what will you do when the world fights back? When it's no longer a simple hospital room, but every door, every system, every law trying to crush you? Can you really handle that? Ethan's gaze didn't waver. I can. Because I don't fight alone. And I don't fight for money. I fight for her life. That makes me stronger than you. The smirk on Gregory's face faltered for a fraction of a second. Just long enough for Alexander to step forward, calm but unyielding. Enough. Gregory held up his hands, mock surrender. Fine. But remember this, Alexander. Helping one child might seem noble, but it awakens the eyes of those who crave what you control. And once awakened, they never forget. Alexander's eyes narrowed. We'll see. With that, Gregory turned and exited the hospital, leaving a quiet tension behind, like smoke curling from a recent fire. But the encounter had shifted something. The easy victory of the day, getting Leah her treatment, was no longer guaranteed. Fate, it seemed, had set new challenges in motion. Inside the hospital room, Ethan knelt beside Leah. Don't worry, he whispered, brushing hair from her face. No one can stop us now. Not him, not anyone, Leah's weak smile flickered. You're like a superhero, she said, her voice small. Even though you're just a boy. Ethan shook his head, a smile tugging at his lips. Superhero? Maybe, but even superheroes need help sometimes. Alexander, standing silently by the door, watched them. Something about this simple exchange, a boy, his sister, their unshakable bond, cut through years of business cynicism and human detachment. He realized that courage, love, and desperation were forces more potent than wealth, more precise than strategy, and more unpredictable than any market. By the evening, Leah had received her first treatment. The medical staff were cautiously optimistic, but the lingering presence of Gregory's looming threats hung like shadows. Alexander decided to take precautionary measures. Security was increased, protocols strengthened, and confidential communications with legal and medical teams were established. But even with precautions, the boy's audacity and love had disrupted the careful equilibrium of Alexander's world. That night, Alexander sat in his penthouse, staring at the city lights. The events of the day replayed in his mind: Ethan's bravery, Gregory's threats, the frail yet hopeful presence of Leah. For the first time, he considered a life beyond spreadsheets, profit margins, and boardroom politics. He considered a world where his resources could heal, protect, and transform lives, not just accumulate wealth. And yet, deep down, he knew the coming days would test everyone's limits. Gregory was only the first of many challenges. Media scrutiny would inevitably follow. Legal complications, jealous rivals, and moral dilemmas would confront them all. But Alexander also realized one thing: hope was contagious. Courage once sparked spread faster than fear, and a boy with nothing to lose had already shown him the way. Meanwhile, Ethan remained vigilant. He stayed at Leah's side, learning to navigate the hospital, anticipating obstacles and refusing to let fear dominate. The bond between the siblings, forged in hardship and nurtured through unwavering love, grew stronger every hour. Every whispered word, every gentle touch, every shared glance reminded Ethan of why he had risked everything to confront a billionaire in the first place. As the night deepened, Alexander made a decision. He would meet with his legal team, yes, but he would also personally oversee Leah's treatment and Ethan's protection. He would not allow bureaucracy or greed to dictate the fate of lives that had already proven their worth in courage and heart. The following morning brought a new challenge: a media leak. Photographs of Ethan standing outside Alexander's car, pleading for his sister's life, were splashed across the city's tabloids. Headlines screamed of child manipulation, billionaire caprice, and miraculous interventions. Ethan's stomach twisted as he read the articles online. Some people were horrified by the audacity. Some mocked him. But in the chaos, a surprising number of readers empathized. Millions saw the raw humanity of a boy fighting for his sister. Social media ignited, spreading stories of courage, love, and hope faster than anyone could anticipate. Alexander recognized the dual-edged sword. Media attention could protect them or endanger them. He needed to manage the narrative carefully, but he also realized that this public spotlight could galvanize support. Doctors, philanthropists, and ordinary citizens could rally behind Ethan and Leah. For the first time in decades, Alexander felt the weight of responsibility, not just for wealth, but for influence, morality, and the fragile lives that depended on it. And for the first time, he allowed himself to hope. Not just that he could help, but that humanity, courage, and love could triumph over cynicism and greed. Meanwhile, Gregory watched from a distance, eyes narrowed. The board had called, the media had called, investors were asking questions. And now, the story of a street kid confronting a billionaire had captured the city's imagination. But Gregory was not deterred. He thrived on chaos. He had plans, and he would ensure that the lives of Ethan, Leah, and even Alexander were caught in a storm from which there might be no escape. In that moment, Ethan realized the truth. Bravery alone was not enough. Strategy, allies, and unbreakable faith would be essential. But as he looked at his sister's sleeping face, fragile yet resilient, he knew he had already won in the most important way. Love had guided his actions, and courage had carried him here. The rest would have to follow. Morning light streamed through the hospital blinds, but inside, the air felt heavy, charged with anticipation, fear, and the echo of yesterday's threats. Ethan sat beside Leah's bed, her frail hand clutching his. She was asleep, but he could sense her restlessness. Every small movement, every shallow breath reminded him why he had risked everything the day before. Alexander arrived quietly, his usual aura of control now tinged with genuine concern. He had spent the night coordinating with medical experts, security teams, and legal advisors. But no amount of planning could prepare him for the raw, unpredictable power of human determination, the kind of determination Ethan carried in every beat of his heart. "Morning," Alexander said softly. His voice was calm, but the faint tension betrayed him. Ethan looked up, eyes red from a restless night. "Morning," he replied, voice tight. She keeps having dreams about the doctor, about getting better. I think she knows something will happen." Alexander's brow furrowed. "Children have intuition," he said carefully. "Sometimes they sense more than adults can comprehend. But dreams are just dreams. We need results." Ethan shook his head. "It's not just dreams. It's hope. And hope is stronger than any of them." Alexander paused, struck by the boy's unwavering faith. In that moment, he realized that hope, the kind born from desperation, love, and raw courage, could bend reality in ways his wealth and experience never could. The tension outside the hospital walls was escalating. Gregory Langston had not remained idle. Investors were calling, newspapers were digging, and whispers of scandal threatened to drown the city in speculation. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire plays savior, child exploitation, or miracle." Social media churned with outrage and admiration, splitting the public in two. Viral videos of Ethan pleading with Alexander circulated, drawing millions of views and stirring debates across forums, news outlets, and talk shows. But while the world watched, the real battle was happening inside the hospital. Leah's treatment had begun, but complications arose. A sudden spike in her fever caused panic among the staff. Machines beeped, monitors flashed, and Alexander felt the familiar weight of control slipping through his fingers. "Call Dr. Reiner immediately," Alexander ordered. "We can't take chances." Ethan's hands trembled. He had hoped for progress, for a chance at recovery. And now he felt helpless once more. But even as fear clawed at him, he refused to leave Leah's side. He whispered to her, soothing her with words she barely understood but somehow felt in her heart. "Stay strong, Leah. You're braver than anyone. We'll get through this." Hours passed in a tense haze. Alexander monitored the legal fallout, preparing statements, consulting lawyers, and anticipating Gregory's next moves. Meanwhile, Ethan remained by Leah's side, holding her hand, encouraging her to fight, to breathe, to live. Their bond had grown unbreakable, a fusion of love, desperation, and faith that transcended circumstance. By late afternoon, Dr. Reiner arrived. His presence brought a quiet authority. He examined Leah meticulously, adjusting medications, monitoring vitals, and speaking with the staff in calm, precise tones. "She's stable," Dr. Reiner announced after a tense pause. "But this is only the beginning. Recovery will require not just medicine, but willpower, courage, and the support of those who truly care." Ethan's eyes met Alexander's. In that glance, they shared a silent understanding. The battle was far from over. But together, they could face whatever fate had in store. As evening fell, a knock at the hospital door disrupted the fragile calm. Security flinched, but Alexander approached, hand on his phone, ready for confrontation. The door opened to reveal a familiar figure, Mara Thompson, a journalist known for sensational stories, her camera crew trailing behind. "Mr. Crane, Mr. Harrison," Mara said, flashing a professional smile. "I've come to cover the story of the boy who confronted a billionaire. I want the truth. The full story. And I want it now," Ethan bristled. "We don't need reporters. We need her alive," Alexander held up a hand. "We'll manage this," he said calmly. "But the world is already watching. We can't hide from it." Mara's gaze softened when she looked at Leah. "She's remarkable," she whispered. "Do you know how much hope your story has given people?" Alexander's eyes narrowed. "Hope isn't a story. It's a responsibility." As Mara filmed, capturing Ethan's plea and Alexander's reluctant compassion, the narrative shifted. The public began to see the boy not as a manipulator, but as a hero. Millions empathized with his courage, his love for his sister, and the audacity to challenge one of the wealthiest men in the world. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended. "Street Kid Hero," miracle for Leah, courage over money. The viral momentum built like a storm, spreading across platforms, igniting debate, admiration, and support. But with attention came danger. Gregory Langston saw the public's fascination as leverage. He contacted the hospital, claiming legal rights to scrutinize the billionaire's actions, implying manipulation and coercion. Lawyers arrived, demanding interviews, threatening injunctions, and forcing Alexander to split his attention between saving Leah's life and protecting Ethan from legal harassment. Ethan felt the pressure mounting, but he refused to falter. He had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, it was persistence despite it. He whispered to Leah, "No matter what happens outside, I'm here. I'm not leaving. We'll face everything together." In a quiet moment, Alexander approached Ethan. "You've changed things," he admitted. "Not just for your sister, but for me. You've reminded me that some battles are worth fighting, no matter the cost." Ethan shrugged, a faint smile on his face. "I only did what anyone would do for someone they love. But you made it easier. You listened. You helped," Alexander shook his head. "I didn't just help. I learned. You've reminded me of a truth I'd forgotten. Power isn't about money. It's about making a difference when it matters most." As night descended, Leah's condition stabilized. Dr. Reiner administered the next phase of her treatment, and for the first time, hope felt tangible. Alexander allowed himself a quiet moment to reflect on the impossible chain of events. A street kid confronting a billionaire, a sister's life hanging by a thread, and the unexpected alliances forged through courage, love, and faith. And then, as if fate itself were intervening, a call came through Alexander's secure line. The voice on the other end was tense, urgent. "Mr. Crane, you need to see this immediately. The donor for Leah's treatment has just arrived, in person. And it's someone unexpected." Alexander's brow furrowed. "Who?" The line went silent for a moment. Then the words hit him like lightning. "It's Gregory Langston." Ethan froze. "What? Why would he?" Alexander didn't answer immediately. He felt a mix of dread, confusion, and a strange flicker of hope. Somehow Gregory's arrival signaled that the game had shifted. The stakes were higher, but the playing field was no longer predictable.
Fate had a hand in the unfolding story, and even the most calculated moves could be overturned by the unpredictable currents of human choice. In the hospital lobby,
Gregory entered, his usual smirk replaced by a more complicated expression. He approached the room where Ethan and Alexander stood, and for a tense moment, no one spoke. Time seemed to slow. The world outside, with its legal threats, media frenzy, and public scrutiny, faded into irrelevance. What mattered was the fragile life of a little girl, the courage of a boy, and the choices of men who could shape destiny. Gregory finally spoke, voice low but firm. "I've seen enough," he said. "Enough to realize you weren't asking for charity. You were asking for justice. And sometimes, justice requires even me to intervene." Ethan's eyes widened. You're giving money?" "For my sister?" Gregory nodded. "Yes, but don't mistake this for generosity. Consider it a lesson, that even the most hardened hearts can be swayed when confronted by courage and love. Use it wisely, protect her, and never forget what brought you here." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. Alexander, too, felt a profound shift. The impossible had happened. The antagonist had become an ally. The threat had transformed into salvation. And the chain of events, set in motion by a single act of bravery, had reached a turning point that none could have predicted. As Leah's treatment continued, and the financial and legal obstacles began to dissipate, the story of a street kid confronting a billionaire, demanding help for his sister, spread like wildfire across the city and the world. Millions celebrated courage, faith, and the extraordinary power of human connection. But for Ethan and Alexander, the lesson was clear. Sometimes, the impossible is only impossible until someone refuses to accept otherwise. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, a promise of possibility etched across the sky. The hospital corridors buzzed with a strange, anticipatory energy. Visitors whispered, staff moved with purpose, and Ethan felt an almost electric charge in the air. Today wasn't just another day of treatment. Today was the day everything could change. Leah's eyes fluttered open to find her brother kneeling beside her bed, brushing her hair back gently. "Good morning, Leah," he said softly, his voice steady but tinged with hope. "Today's the day we've been waiting for." She blinked, small lips curling into a tentative smile. Are we really going to do it?" Ethan squeezed her hand. "Yes. We're going to show everyone that miracles are possible, because we never gave up." Across the room, Alexander watched silently. He had spent the previous night reviewing every medical report, consulting specialists, and re-evaluating the chain of events that had brought them here. What he had thought was a calculated act of philanthropy had become something far greater, a human story that defied logic, reason, and expectation. The media had been warned to wait outside. Social media feeds were already exploding with speculation. Was Street Kid vs. Billionaire? Was Leah miracle? Was courage over money? News outlets called it the most compelling human interest story of the year. Millions of eyes would soon witness what had begun as desperation and fear, and was now poised to become a triumph that none could ignore. Dr. Reiner entered, calm but purposeful. "We're ready for the final phase of her treatment. Vital signs are stable, the infusion is working as planned, and her condition is optimal for observation. We just need her to engage fully, mentally, emotionally, physically. The next steps are as much about willpower as medicine." Ethan nodded, leaning close to Leah. "You can do this, Leah. You've been brave every step of the way. Now it's time to show everyone what courage really means." Leah's small hand pressed into his, her gaze unwavering. "I'll try," she whispered. Outside the hospital room, Alexander adjusted his tie and straightened his posture. He was about to witness something unprecedented, a story that would live in infamy, not for scandal, not for wealth, but for the triumph of human spirit over circumstance. Then, Gregory Langston appeared at the doorway, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the scene inside. Ethan tensed. The billionaire's presence had shifted from antagonist to unexpected ally, and yet Alexander knew that Gregory's ego, pride, and need to control still lingered beneath the surface. This was a man unaccustomed to uncertainty, and yet here he was, observing courage, not commanding it. Leah's treatment began in earnest. Machines hummed, monitors flashed, and Dr. Reiner guided her through exercises she had previously thought impossible. Ethan's hands gripped hers, giving strength through touch, through presence, through love. Each movement was deliberate. Lift your arm, take a breath, focus your mind. Each step forward, small, tentative, shaky, was monumental. Hours passed in a blur of intensity, sweat, and emotion. Alexander stood to the side, feeling helpless yet honored to witness the process. He realized that no amount of wealth, influence, or power could replicate this moment. This was pure human determination, fueled by love, desperation, and the audacity to believe in the impossible. And then it happened. Leah took her first independent step. The room froze. Machines beeped, monitors flickered, but none of it mattered. Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. He whispered her name, Leah. "You did it," the little girl wobbled, tiny legs trembling, but she walked. Step by step she moved toward her brother, toward freedom from fear, toward the life they had imagined together. Tears streamed down Ethan's face as he knelt to meet her halfway. "You're walking," he shouted, voice breaking. "Yes!" Leah cried, her smile radiant, unstoppable. "I'm walking!" Dr. Reiner clapped softly, eyes glistening. Incredible. Truly, this is beyond anything we've documented before. Her resilience, her determination. It's a medical marvel. Alexander exhaled, heart pounding, a rare smile breaking across his usually impassive face. This is why we do what we do," he murmured. Then Gregory Langston stepped forward, removing his usual guarded facade. "I never thought I'd say this," he admitted, "but courage like this demands recognition. You've all taught me more about humanity than any boardroom ever could." Ethan, still holding Leah's hands, looked at Gregory, his voice trembling. "Thank you for believing, for stepping aside, for letting this happen." Gregory nodded. "Don't thank me. Thank yourselves. You fought. You risked. You loved. That's what created this miracle, not me." News of Leah's progress spread like wildfire. Viral videos captured the first steps, hashtags exploded, and social media erupted in awe and celebration. Millions around the world were inspired by a story that transcended wealth, class, and circumstance. A street kid confronting a billionaire had led to a miracle that no one could have predicted. But the story wasn't over yet. As Leah grew stronger, Alexander called a meeting in his office. The legal threats, the media frenzy, and Gregory's previous attempts at control were still looming. But now, they seemed insignificant compared to the triumph before them. "Ethan," Alexander began, voice serious, "your courage has changed everything, and now the world sees what I've seen. Determination, love, and unwavering faith can move mountains. But there's still work to do, financial, legal, medical. Are you ready?" Ethan squared his shoulders. "We've faced fear before. We've fought the impossible before, and we'll do it again, together." Gregory unexpectedly placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Then let's finish this. No more interference, no more threats, just life, love, and what's right." Months passed. Leah continued to recover, surpassing all medical expectations. Each milestone, the first full day standing, the first run in the hospital corridor, the first laugh that didn't carry pain, was celebrated like a victory against fate itself. Alexander found himself reflecting often on the events. Wealth, power, and influence were meaningless without purpose, without connection, without the courage to act when it mattered most. Ethan, the street kid, had reminded him that true power comes from bravery, compassion, and the refusal to accept impossible as an answer. The story culminated in a quiet, unassuming ceremony. Leah's first steps outside, the first time she played in the sunlight unassisted, were documented not for headlines, but for the memory of what had been accomplished. The media had their viral moments, yes, but for Ethan, Alexander, and Leah, the true victory was personal, intimate, and transformative. On a bright afternoon, Ethan lifted Leah onto his shoulders. She laughed, sunlight catching her hair, freedom in her eyes. Alexander and even Gregory watched, sharing a rare moment of genuine admiration and humanity. "You did it," Alexander said quietly. "All of you." Ethan smiled, heartful. "No, we did it. Together. Every step, every risk, every act of faith. And in that moment, the impossible became reality." A street kid's courage had confronted the cold calculations of wealth. A billionaire had learned humility, respect, and the transformative power of human connection. And a little girl, once fragile and fearful, had walked into a life filled with hope, love, and possibility. The world would remember the story, viral and sensational. Millions would share it, debate it, and celebrate it. But for those at its center, it was more than a story. It was proof that love, courage, and unwavering faith can turn even the darkest despair into light. Ethan held Leah's hand, Alexander standing beside them, and even Gregory lingered with a newfound respect for the extraordinary resilience of ordinary humans. "Remember this," Ethan whispered to Leah, voice full of wonder. "This is what happens when you refuse to give up, when you fight for what's right, and when you love without fear." Leah nodded, small but resolute. "I'll remember." And as the sun set over the city, casting golden light across the streets and hospital walls, one truth shone brighter than all. Miracles don't just happen. They are created by courage, by faith, by the unyielding power of love.